Delightful. Noel, I was recently hit with a copyright infringement claim for using 1.9 seconds of that song. So my fade has been a little less David Guetta and a little more Scary Alvarez, just trying to get one second in it to keep the brand going. But anyway, welcome to the Scary Alvarez podcast, Axe Game Edition. We are joined by Noel Thompson of Gopherhole.com. As we had previously noted, don't type something besides .com into Gopherhole. You might get something you're not looking for. But welcome aboard, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's our favorite time of the year, the best rivalry in all college football.
I agree. I saw something hop up on Twitter today that was trying to claim that Nebraska Iowa was the second best rivalry game in the Big Ten, and I'm not sure I've ever seen such a ratio. Like I don't even think they have an award for that game. It's like the payday Rapper Bowl or something.
Yeah, well, Iowa fans and Nebraska fans, especially on Twitter, they're something else. So I'm not surprised you saw such a thing on Twitter. That doesn't surprise me at all.
It's terrible. It was a nice respite from the Bears fans claiming that they're the best team in the NFL right now when they've beaten like a team with one win.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're going to talk about what we both know is the best rivalry in college football. That's the Axe game. The Axe currently resides up in Minneapolis. My guess is it's residing in the marital bed of PJ Fleck since last November. I don't think that's too much of a stretch. But we're going to get your perspective on some of this stuff from up there. A lot has obviously happened since you and I last chatted. Minnesota now finds itself 6-5, losing 3 of 4, a little bit of a downturn. Wisconsin, in contrast, has finally found the gear that makes it feel like a legitimate Big Ten football team. I'm not going to go any further than that. I mean, obviously upsetting a couple of solid but not incredible teams at home means something. It feels great. I don't think it's any sort of we're an elite team again, but it does at least feel like firm footing relative to what had been happening for the Badgers. Um, I want to go to. We'll talk about both teams, obviously, but I want to go to the Badgers first. Not shockingly, winning the 2 out of 3, looking competitive with Indiana in the first half of that game before kind of just getting the break speed off of them by a better team. Um, as a Minnesota fan and analyst, what is the perception right now of what's going on in Madison the last month or so, and what that might mean for the future of the program?
Yeah, a lot has changed since we last talked. A lot has changed in the last month. What I've noticed about Wisconsin is they're playing more physical. They're playing physical Wisconsin Big Ten ball, and it's not always pretty. But their defense especially has played really physical. They're playing like their hair is on fire. So I've noticed from a defensive side that they're just more aggressive, more physical, and they're playing really really well. They hung on with Indiana that first half, and Indiana is really good, and so and to beat Illinois, who I think is also a very physical team. Yeah, I think they've kind of turned a corner in a lot of ways from a defensive side, a physicality side. And so this Axe game looks a lot different now than it did appear a month ago, which is crazy.
Yeah, and we'll get into the brass tacks of what the game might look like. Obviously, we'll get some predictions and things like that. Reminder to anyone watching this, please like, subscribe, and comment. It's always fun. Noel, as you know, it's often a competition between my podcast and PJ Fleck's podcast. I didn't see the nude hang gliding episode that he just put out last week. That apparently has been taking some of my audience away. I'm not sure why that would happen, but anyway, hey, there's room enough for the PJ Fleck podcast as well. No problem. But thanks for that. But yeah, no, I agree with you. And to put a finer point on it, I don't want to say it came out of nowhere, but that Washington game, and it was ideal conditions for the Badgers in terms of it was a real cold, windy, rainy kind of situation. And I know that's a team from the Pacific Northwest, and they're used to those conditions, but it was the perfect storm for stealing one. And what you're observing is the toughness and the grittiness. I think that's been everything. And you can't trace it back to one specific thing. There are 2 freshmen inside linebackers on the Badgers, Cooper Catalano and Mason Posa. True freshman kids, both really highly regarded high school players. Hosa was a composite or a consensus 4-star. And since they have been inserted in the lineup, it's like a switch flipped. And I'm talking about even players who have been playing okay, solidly on the defensive line. It's like they're following the lead of these young bucks. And, I'm not saying that this is an elite defense right now, but it is a defense that you don't want to play. It's just simple as that. And Minnesota will put points up. I'm not saying it's not that kind of defense, but it's the kind of defense that when you're on the sidelines after your drive finishes, whatever the result of that drive, you are feeling what just happened. You're rubbing that shoulder. The Illinois quarterback, I think it had to have been the game he was flummoxed the most in the season. Wisconsin had 5 sacks in that game against the Illini last weekend, but quarterback hits, it was in the double digits. Just a brutal effort in a good way. And, you mentioned the offense. The offense, they have a true freshman, 18-year-old quarterback. It isn't pretty, but I will say the prettiest drive of Wisconsin season, that first drive of the game against Illinois, almost 9 minutes off the clock, touchdown drive, just a sea change. You didn't see that in 3 straight games, and you saw it in just the first quarter. So, yeah, I think you're right, Noel. I mean, that's, so when we say Wisconsin Badgers, the average Gopher fan, what is kind of I'm not saying you're sitting there cowering in fear for the Badgers coming in. It's not the 2019 Badgers. But what is kind of the mindset of the fan base as this game approaches?
Well, I think what makes Gopher fans nervous is the last month where this Gopher team is kind of trending downwards and this Badger team is trending upwards. And that kind of brings a certain level of anxiety and nervousness. For me, it does. I'm seeing this Wisconsin Badgers team not only play well, but they're winning games. And this Minnesota football team, I hate to say it, almost appears like they're getting worse almost, outside of a few aspects. And so I think if this game was not in Minneapolis, I would have no faith in Minnesota defending the Axe. But I think because it is in Minnesota, gives me a little bit more hope just because this team has been awful on the road. They've been decent at home. And so, again, I think Gopher fans are nervous because they're seeing this Wisconsin team play better while this Minnesota defense is playing worse. And so it'll be an interesting game on Saturday.
Yeah, I was a little – I appreciate that analysis, and I was a little bit surprised by the score of the Northwestern game. Minnesota just played at, I believe it was Wrigley Field.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like one of those crazy Cardinals-Cubs games from the 80s when the wind is blowing out in Wrigley. It's like 18 to, except for the football version of that. And I know that like most of the losses, obviously there was a loss in Iowa that was a complete blowout, but most of Minnesota's losses this season have been competitive, and that was one that felt like it slipped away. I feel like Minnesota had it, and then they just kind of let it go at the end. And you always wonder, mentally how that affects them going into the next week.
It's two things. It was Drake Lindsey's best game of the year. I mean, he threw over 250 yards, 4 touchdowns, and anytime you score 35 points in a Big Ten game, you should win. And if you don't win, there's some problems. And so, kind of positive and negative here, if you don't mind. From a positive standpoint, Drake Lindsey, best game of the year for him against a Big Ten opponent on the road. But the defense, man, is just it's not good. Zone coverage is horrible. They get too handsy in man coverage. They're missing tackles, poor angles, which is strange because this is a team that is near the top or at the top in sacks in the Big Ten. But it feels like if this team is not sacking the quarterback, it's given up a 25-yard game. It's just a Jekyll and Hyde year. And you saw that. And especially on the road this season, this team has just been awful on the road. Now, a little bit of bias here. We had to play Ohio State, Oregon, and Iowa. Pretty good teams, good defenses. But they haven't really been competitive in those games. They dropped the game at Cal. You lose to Northwestern, which I think you and I can say Northwestern, they're better than we probably thought they would be. But again, if you score 35 points in a Big Ten game, you should win that game. But the defense could not get a stop. They couldn't stop a nosebleed, and they haven't really all year.
Yeah, that's good analysis. I appreciate that. And, I can't say I'm following the Gophers too closely, but I will. From the socials, I'm not saying it's the same as a Wisconsin win if Minnesota loses, but I have a little bit of Schadenfreude for the Gophers, and I wasn't crying when they dropped that game to Northwestern. Certainly, you know that, but I think we both know this. You kind of throw everything out when this game happens. I think that's always been the way it's played in the past. Even those years where Wisconsin was dominating, there were several of those games that were closer than people thought it was going to be. The pride. I know PJ Fleck. It's a more so than Luke Fickell. Don't get me wrong. I know Luke Fickell is learning these traditions, but PJ Fleck knows the value, whether it's with the boosters, the fan base, maybe even his own wife at home. Beating the Wisconsin means a lot. There's no question.
Yeah, if there's one thing PJ can really hang his hat on in his tenure in Minnesota is that he has brought balance to the Minnesota Wisconsin rivalry. I mean, he has. He has beaten Wisconsin more than he kind of had, more than lost in the last couple of years. What is it, 3 out of 4? And so
it's 3 out of 4. It's 4-4 overall. So this will be the balance game to see whether he has a winning or a losing record against Wisconsin in his tenure.
Right, but again, the Gophers have had success against Wisconsin in his tenure compared to the other rivalries, and so this is a rivalry where he could kind of hang his hat on. We have the axe, and I think both coaches need this game. Just from again, you end your season on beating your biggest rival. Both teams need this game, but I think for PJ, I tell you what, 7-5 looks and feels a lot better than 6-6.
Yeah.
And so PJ really needs this win. I think Gopher fans are a little frustrated. They're questioning a lot of things, especially on the defensive side. But again, this game's at home, which I think gives Gopher fans a little bit of hope. But yeah, PJ really needs this win. I mean, more than anything, the season has been such a roller coaster, and to end it losing to Wisconsin, finishing 6-6, probably going to Detroit for a bowl game. That's not really what anybody wants.
It sounds great. Sounds great to me. Hey, at least you got a bowl game. Yeah, I mean, kind of the flip side is I know Minnesota's been a bit of a roller coaster, and we'll get to predictions as I noted earlier in a bit. I think part of we were analyzing Wisconsin and why the switch appears to have flipped for them. It doesn't make them unbeatable, but it definitely makes them a tougher out. I looked at their last 7 games that they have played this season. This isn't even counting the Alabama game in Tuscaloosa, so that one already happened. But it was at number 20 Michigan, Iowa, and Minnesota. You know how tough they can be. Number 1 Ohio State, at number 6 Oregon, number 23 Washington, at number 2 Indiana, number 21 Illinois. This is a battle-tested team, so I don't think they're gonna go into the stadium in Minneapolis on Saturday with wide eyes, going, "Oh man, look at this environment. This is intimidating." They're going to be fine. They went into Bloomington and played even with Indiana for a half. So that doesn't. We'll get to predictions as I said, but that doesn't mean it's not going to be a very close game. It doesn't mean Minnesota can't win the game. I just think that Wisconsin has a level of confidence now where they're not going to go in and shit the bed. I think that was a big concern for this fan base coming in to this season, and when they were. I think they were 0-5 in the Big Ten at one point, maybe 0-6. We were looking ahead to this game a little bit and going, "Oh God!" Then we're going to close the year getting our asses handed to us in Minneapolis. I don't think anyone feels that way anymore, but we do know it's going to be a tough game. What do you think the key matchups are on Saturday?
Again, I think it's going to be strength versus strength, which is always kind of fun to watch. Again, not that our offense is a huge strength, not that your defense is a huge strength, but our offense is, again, coming off one of its best performances of the season. Wisconsin defense is playing really well, and so I think that will be an interesting matchup. Wisconsin offense is, again, kind of they've been dealing with a lot of injuries, and this Minnesota defense is not good. So it's going to be really curious to see strength versus strength, weakness versus weakness. Minnesota special teams has been horrible, but I think if Minnesota wins this game, it's on Drake Lindsey. That's our only hope is Drake Lindsey and his ability to read coverage and and make the throws. Obviously, having a Darius Taylor will be good. He's not 100%, but hopefully he plays. But this game depends on Drake Lindsey and his ability to make the throws that he's capable of throwing, and hopefully he does that, obviously. But I think the key is Drake Lindsey, and at least putting some points up on the board where it gives the Minnesota defense a chance to do something. So we'll see.
Yeah, I agree. Lindsey has been upping his play recently. So, and Wisconsin, as you're probably following, has five sacks in 3 consecutive games against Washington, at Indiana, and Illinois. These are not shrinking violent offensive lines, nor are they bad quarterbacks. Got a Heisman quarterback in there too, who has mobility. So I think they're going to get there. So Wisconsin's game plan, I can already tell you, and they've shut down the run all season. I'm not saying you got a stud back there, despite the fact that he's gimpy. I don't think that's where they're going to make their meat. I think it's going to be downfield. Wisconsin secondary is a little suspect, but it's going to come down to whether they can get the pressure and the hits on Lindsey that they have been getting on other teams. It's as simple as that. I mean, they made Luke Altmaier's life miserable. He wants to go back and Men in Black that day completely from his memory because he got bludgeoned, which was really encouraging to see against a team. Look, Illinois is not an elite team, but Bielema is a good coach, and that is a tough team. And for Wisconsin's defense, to dominate the way they did, to the point where Illinois' lineman got ejected because he was so frustrated with these edge rushers. He actually got two 15-yard penalties in 4 plays and got kicked out. But I think you're right. I think Wisconsin's ability to shut down one of the better quarterbacks they've seen this season is going to be really, really key. Okay, so we talked a little bit. We're going to kind of bunch on this and make some predictions. I'm going to put you on the spot here with the spotlight. Is PJ Fleck the guy?
I mean, that's a great question. Oh, man.
I like asking tough questions that make Gopher fans uncomfortable, especially ones who are very pro-Gopher.
I'm very comfortable answering this. I think we look at the Minnesota Gopher football program in the last 40, 50 years. And if you really want to look at that program as a whole in the last 40 or 50 years, outside of Glenn Mason, I think PJ Fleck is that guy. I mean, again, we're not going to be in Oregon. We're not going to be in Ohio State, but he has accomplished things at this program that no coach has accomplished in the last 5 or 6 decades. Now, right, you could say, well, Minnesota's been horrible for the last 4 or 5 decades. Sure. Outside of Glenn Mason, this program really hasn't had an identity. But as you and I have talked before, I think this Minnesota program has an identity. They're doing really well academically. They're doing really well outside of the field as far as just, there's no scandals or arrests. He has one of the highest retainments in college football. And look, players either love playing for him or they don't. And so this team has a strong culture and identity, which I think as a college football fan, you really want that a lot, right? We've talked about that with Luke Fickell sometimes regarding identity and culture. Again, PJ Fleck might not be your favorite personality or guy, but I've seen him off the field enough to know that he's 100% authentic off and on the field. I'm a fan. Again, the last 4 or 5 years under him have had some really good wins compared to the last 20 years. Do I think he's going to be here forever? Probably not, but I'm the type of guy that you have to ride the wave that you're on and enjoy it as you can.
Yeah, I think that all reflects reality. I don't think you're looking at this through goldy glasses. I do think, I noted this earlier this fall, I may take issue with what that culture looks like, or it might be cringy. I can think of a lot of words, but he has a culture. That's a fact. I mean, you go to Minnesota, you're a recruit, you're a transfer, you're a fan. You know what you're getting. And there is some value to that. I consider PJ Fleck a very high floor coach, and that may seem like praise, but given Wisconsin's last few seasons have not felt very high floor. For a culture that wanted the highest of the high ceiling, Paul Chryst wasn't good enough because it wasn't getting us to college football playoff. It's a real splash of water in the face when you're fighting to get an academic bowl game with 5 wins this year. I mean, that's kind of where we are. I like some of the things that have happened recently with Fickell. I think it may be a long time coming as far as the identity, but Fleck has one. It's just a fact. I thought of a few things that Fleck could do if he ever moves on from college football coaching. He could be a dancer at LeBaire. I know those are popular adult establishments. He could sneak back in as Goldie Gopher. I think some of that, he likes to be in front of the camera. He could be a Culver's shift leader. Be some irony there. A cheerleader for the Minnesota Vikings. Skol, let's do that. A life coach for JJ McCarthy, who might be in need of that right now. He could do maybe open a CrossFit gym in Edina. I think there's some definite positives there. And he could be a Planet Fitness Zumba class coach. So there are all kinds of possibilities if it doesn't work out for him. I'm rooting for it. But I think he's going to stay there in Minneapolis for a while. And I think it's more fun with him there. Okay, we're at that special time of the show, Noel. We are going to have to make a prediction that is going to be forever on the internet unless I delete it because my prediction was so bad. What do you like for Saturday?
Well, I'm looking at it right now. What is it? A 3-point. Minnesota's favored by 3 points. Over under is, gosh, I don't even know. But
take the under. I'm telling you, take the under.
Yeah, take the under. I'll say this: if this game was in Madison, I would honestly predict a Wisconsin blowout. I would probably have Wisconsin winning by 2 touchdowns.
So 14-0.
This team, though, this Minnesota team is undefeated at home, and they've figured out a way at home. They play better at home. They've dominated Nebraska. They've again just wreaked havoc on the quarterback at home, and so I'll be biased here. I think the whole team wins. I think the home team will win this game wherever the home team was this year. Give me Minnesota. Give me Minnesota by 3. I don't think it's going to be high scoring. But again, I see this game kind of going both ways. I would not be surprised if Wisconsin wins. I'm not trying to say that to cover my behind, but I think Minnesota has played really well at home. I think they get back on track against Wisconsin. I think Anthony Smith will prove to people that he's one of the best edge rushers in the Big Ten, as he's been doing all year. I think Drake Lindsay continues to, again, have a better, not better game, but I think Drake Lindsay continues to play well. So give me Minnesota by 1. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen this Saturday.
You went from by 1. Okay, I thought you said by 3. Okay, so by 1. Yeah, that's reasonable. And are we thinking like 27-26 kind of 1, or like a 13-12 kind of 1?
I'm gonna give you 2. It's either 14-13 or 38-37. I just think these rivalry games, you have no idea. You have no idea. And so I truly do not have – I have no idea what's going to happen this Saturday, which is very anxiety-inducing, but I'm looking forward to it because when was the last time we had a rivalry axe game where both teams are just – they need it, and we have no idea what's going to happen. And so for me, I'm excited. I really am. What about you? What's your prediction?
Yeah, I think if last year – I'd be more bullish on Minnesota if last year wouldn't happen. I think – that was such a kick in the teeth, bully ball, shove in a locker kind of performance by Minnesota in Madison. I'm not saying because Iowa blew us out in 2024 and also in 20. So I don't want to say that's, but I think this team is in a different mindset than they were back in October. So I feel better about Wisconsin, and also, there isn't really Minnesota isn't stopped from going to a bowl game if Wisconsin wins. Wisconsin probably not going to go, but I think it's just about pride and continuing this late season streak. Maybe sending a message to some of the last members of your recruiting class who are deciding whether to stay on or jump off. Great momentum. I think it's going to be a very low scoring, hard hitting, closely fought game. We're not going to see 38-37, Noel. I'm pretty confident about that. I'm going to take the Badgers 2017. This could go either way. I would not be shocked if Minnesota won, but giving PJ Fleck the axe 2 consecutive years is too much to bear. I cannot abide that, and the Badgers have to chop down. I said they literally need to chop down the goalposts. I don't mean just do it take a chainsaw and steal their way through it. But anyway, should be a fun one. Thanks for jumping on, and good luck in the sense of I hope your players stay healthy on Saturday. That's about as far as I'm going to go. Yeah, but I do appreciate having you on.
I appreciate it. Real quick, the line is now Minnesota 1.5. And
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Over under 37. So your prediction's right around that.
Yeah,
2017.
it sounds about right. I know my team. All right, Noel. We'll have a great one, and we'll talk to you soon. We'll catch up on Saturday, I'm sure.
Thanks for having me. Have a good week.